This is Joseph Anderson, CEO and founder of Connex. Years ago, I watched my mother lose her job after developing carpal tunnel syndrome from repetitive data entry work, and she later had surgery and was let go. That moment really stuck with me. I remember thinking, there has to be a better way, and that's what inspired me to create Connex, a tool that automates e-commerce operations and helps businesses eliminate the kind of tedious manual work that burns people out. That's why I'm excited to welcome today's guests. Adeline Kuo is a supply chain strategist and product leader who spent her career making e-commerce logistics more efficient, scalable, and human-centered. As a former senior operations research manager at Shopify, she's helped businesses of all sizes deliver faster, operate smarter, and grow with confidence. Kermit was the director of operations research at Shopify with key focuses on inventory optimization, balancing, and placement. Prior to Shopify, he was a director of operations research at Wayfair, and he focused on providing analytics, optimization, and data science support for the supply chain. Both Adeline and Kermit are co-founders of Innovative Optimizations, a consulting firm that helps consumer brands and e-commerce sellers navigate complex inventory decisions and scale their operations strategically. In today's episode, we'll talk about smart inventory management tips for your online sellers at any stage, how to decide between off-the-shelf and custom-built solutions, and what scaling logistics look best behind the scenes, and why data-driven decision-making is key, but not the whole picture. If you've ever struggled with stockouts, shipping delays, or outgrowing your back-end tools, this conversation will give you clarity and confidence for your next move. So Adeline Kermit, why'd you start innovative optimizations? If you've ever struggled with stockouts, shipping delays, or outgrowing your back-end tools, this conversation will give you the clarity and confidence for your next move. Adeline and Kermit, how did you start your business?
Yeah, so I've always loved solving real world problems with math, which led me to study operations research and eventually work at a boutique consulting company in this field. However, when parenthood made frequent travel basically less practical, I pivoted to the car service industry, where I helped to modernize a mid-sized company, bringing it from a dated operation to one that could rival Uber. And then that experience allowed me to lead across multiple areas, including operations, product development, and data analytics. Then came the pandemic, which shifted the landscape dramatically with ride demand disappearing and online shopping booming. I joined Shopify's first operations research team that was founded by Kermit. And it was my first time working inside a large company, building tools that could impact countless merchants at once. And when Shopify decided to exit the logistics industry, I started to tinker around with building software on the side. And that's when Kermit suggested that we explore entrepreneurship together. And I've known Kermit for over 20 years, and he's always been my favorite person to work with, the most fun person to hang out with. So when he was in, I was all in, and that's how we came to be.
Yeah, I know Kermit, he lives in Massachusetts, and I think you live out of state. So how did you meet in person, or how did you two meet in person?
So we worked together at the boutique consulting company for over a decade together. So I was living up in Boston at that time for most of the 10 years. So we had a lot of fun times together.
Yeah, and then we were pretty used to working remotely because that was the setup at Shopify. So both of us pretty much formed the operations research team there for their logistics area.
And so Kermit, you mentioned that you started this, so you were at Shopify, you ran this team about scaling logistics and doing inventory management. And then at some point you decided to move on from Shopify and then start the business. It sounds like this is your passion, building inventory management and optimization software for clients. And when Shopify, like Adeline said, exited the logistics business, you decided that you want to take another path. Is that kind of what happened?
Yeah, that was part of it. And it was also we're not going to limit ourselves necessarily just to logistics. In fact, we have a scheduling solution that we're trying to create for workforce scheduling, which I think might have a bigger impact on the world. There are lots of logistics solutions out there. We think we have a better mousetrap, but the area of workforce scheduling, I think, is more fresh and new and can have a bigger impact on people's lives. So we're trying to build tools to enable companies to have a more flexible workforce as well. And kind of starting on our own and having our own company has kind of taught us how great life is when you have a little bit more flexibility.
And so you built this workforce demand software, like kind of like timekeeping. Is it doing any payroll or is it just more of like a scheduler?
It's a scheduler, and the idea is if you're an hourly employee, whether it's a call center or a retail store or a restaurant, that instead of keeping things simple and having people work a set number of hours, through our software, you are able to get employee preferences and have much more complicated schedules because the software can manage it and figure out what suits everybody's schedule, their lifestyle, etc. So it's a win-win both for the employees and also for the companies.
Yeah, so they can better ensure that they have people like at the front desk. They're properly manned, you could say, at various locations at the business. There's someone at the cash register, there's somebody in the stock room, making sure if somebody calls out that there's someone filling the position. It must be harder at a larger company like a Shopify to make sure you have people and doing technical support up front, writing code, doing sales, making sure you have enough people at the right time of the year. So I assume that at Shopify you probably learned a lot of these kind of demand things.
Yeah,
I mean,
Adeline worked on a project in that area.
yeah, because there's always a need for 24/7 customer service coverage, and you do hire people from all around the world, so it makes sense to match their shifts with their time zones, with the time zones of your customers, so that you meet your customer needs, but at the same time you're trying to maximize the sort of happiness of your employees. These are jobs with relatively high turnover. So if you can reduce that, and also some people just are more productive when they're working the right shifts, or if you're not constantly changing their shifts, their circadian rhythm, then you end up with just a lot more productivity for the business as well. So like
Yeah,
Kermit said, a
right. So
win-win.
if you have customers in China, you may want employees in China because of the time zones. Whereas if you have employees in Boston, you probably want people on, the East Coast because, like you said, they have a dedicated shift like 9 to 5. They know like what to expect.
Yeah, but there, you also have like some people who, like working night shifts because maybe they have to take care of their kids during the day. So there's a variety of reasons people, want or need to work different shifts. So it's about, trying to best match the people with the needs
Yeah,
rather
some
than
people
just,
are a night owl. My uncle actually, he's retired now, but he worked a night shift for a university for I think 5+ years doing HVAC. So he would sleep during the day and he had a midnight, I think, to like 7 a.m.
yeah. And it works really well for some people. It's just, you have to take the time to know that that's what they want rather than just randomly assign whatever you want because it's easier.
So it sounds like you're doing a little bit of work with kind of demand forecasting. You're putting 10 people on, let's say a Friday, but maybe 2 or 3 on a Monday when the customer service is a little slower. So getting back to inventory optimization and warehousing, do you have any tips for demand forecasting and inventory in these ever-changing online markets? How does a business not only keep its employees happy and productive, but how do we keep the products on the shelves?
Yeah, no, that's a great question. I mean, especially with such a dynamic market, you have to prioritize recent data. I know a lot of very old school methods for forecasting rely on just looking at historical data, but which is important. But I think in sort of the online shopping world, the landscape changes very quickly. Weighting more recent data is very important. Using hybrid approaches is also important because while yes, there's a lot of machine learning and newfangled approaches, you don't necessarily want to completely throw away the old school ways of doing forecasting because they also make sense. And you may want to go just beyond looking at your historical sales because marketing affects what will happen in the future. Competitor pricing, macroeconomic indicators. I mean, we've got tariffs. Could one day tariffs, not the other day, and back and forth. So all of those factors are pretty important. And then also choosing the right forecasting interval level. So if you try to forecast on a daily level, you may not get very good results. But if you forecast for too long of a horizon, maybe not very useful for inventory planning. And Different SKUs might require different forecasting techniques. Like, say, forecasting toilet paper can be pretty simple because people just use it every day all the time. But then if you're trying to forecast like a high fashion item, it's definitely a lot trickier. And so all of those things are, I think, like very important to keep in mind. And then you also want to make sure you're monitoring your forecast accuracy. So yes, you can use all these newfangled AI tools, but you also have to make sure that they're actually doing what they are telling, like you may be using it and fitting it on, historical data, but you have to make sure that your forecasts and your actual results are pretty in line. Otherwise, it's not very useful.
Yeah, I agree. My company has done some work with inventory planning, and if you look at 2 years worth of inventory data and say on average we sell 10 a month, but during Christmas, let's say you sell 50 a day, and then the rest of the year you don't sell anything, it's not an accurate forecast. You want to make sure you look at this period last year. So if you're trying to forecast for Q4 of 2025, you want to look at maybe Q4 of 2024 and figure out what happened. So I agree with what you're saying.
Yeah, there's also all this hype about AI.
Mm-hmm.
And what's even the definition of AI? Like if you talk about generative AI and ChatGPT, it's not that good at math, right? Machine learning, you can consider AI. The things that Adeline and I do, some of which are models that were built in the 1950s. Technically, that's AI. That's computers making decisions. But what you find is there's a lot of hype. Like a new machine learning model came out a few years ago, the transformer model. And we were asked at Shopify to use it because it was all this hype about how great it was. You know what? It improved things a little bit in certain situations. It performed worse than old school methods in others. Everything is, you can get some gradual improvements by using the right technique in the right situation, but there's no one answer fits all. There's no game changer out there, right? Even though the media will make it look like there is every 5
there's
minutes.
a lot of different models on a lot of different systems. So it sounds like there's some, generative AI, but you said it may not be that accurate. You have machine learning where you can train it over time, it will predict. So those are some definitely good points. So your favorite inventory optimization software, if you could change one thing about it, what would it be? Would it be to use AI more or maybe use the 1950s models?
I think the biggest problem with it is with them in general, you have these, I would put them in 2 classes. Class number 1 is kind of a integrated ERP system. So we're talking like SAP and Oracle and those solutions. And they tend to be a bit generic in a way. They have a whole suite of functionality and integration, but I find that their logic, usually because it's supposed to fit with everybody, it doesn't really fit with everybody. And then you have kind of more targeted, smaller apps that just focus on forecasting and inventory. Their problem is they're not particularly integrated with anything. So you get a decision, maybe you get a slightly better forecast for your needs, but then what do you do with it? It's kind of hard to translate that into direct action. So what I would improve is, number 1, I would make the solution a little bit more holistic. And then number 2, be able to somehow make it so you can integrate it to get direct action. Find that a lot of people, especially in the smaller systems, spend a lot of time translating what the recommendations from the software is to their own actions, like their own orders or transfers or whatever. And that's usually a manual process. So Joe, I know you have Connex, which is supposed to eliminate manual work. I think that's a big opportunity in the market. Let the little guy, have everything at their fingertips so it can be more fun.
Yeah, that's our goal with Connex. We now integrate with over 12 accounting systems, including Odoo, Sage, Xero, Zoho Books. Many companies hold their inventory in their accounting system, and then they sell on like a Shopify or a Walmart. You really need a tool that can bring all the data together, all the orders. Even wholesalers will put their orders into QuickBooks or the accounting system to get all the wholesale, all the Shopify, all the Walmart, put it all together. Give me a year's worth of data and give me a true, accurate forecast based on the numbers. I mean, it's great to have one selling channel and one forecaster, but if you have multiple channels, that's when a lot of them don't do as well.
And I think there's a functionality that almost all inventory systems omit, depending on your business, is the most important one, especially if you're a small e-commerce retailer. And that's obsolescence cost. So there are things that you buy that only last for so long.
Fashion,
And
for
I think a
example.
lot of people maybe buy too much in the beginning, thinking, oh, this is going to be great and it's going to sell, and then it doesn't. And then you end up eating that cost, which has a big impact on your business. And I don't know of any solutions out there that do a good job of figuring out how to deal with that situation. I mean, I know how to deal with it. There's logic that you can build to do it, but I don't see it offered in the market.
Yeah, one thing I've noticed, many of my customers, they sell wholesale and they'll do like pre-orders. So let's say you want to buy a laptop computer from me. I don't have the laptop computer in stock, so I call HP and I say, hey, HP, Kermit wants your laptop. And let's say, all right, you pay me, and then I pay, let's say HP, $200 less, and I take it and I ship it to you. And that's how a lot of them do business. So that way they don't have all these kind of inventory planner or obsolescence costs. They just order it as they need it. What do you think? Have you found a lot of businesses are running that way now?
I mean, some do, but you have to be in a position where you can run that way. So I would call that the drop ship model. So you're really just kind of a middleman that sends the order basically to somebody else. And then that person you put the burden on that person or entity to manage the inventory. So your scenario works as long as HP actually has the inventory. So somebody ultimately has to make that decision. So that's one way of mitigating risk and, of course, mitigating obsolescence. But depending on your situation or business, you might not necessarily have that option, especially nowadays where people want everything quickly and they want it
In like
fast.
2 days. I wanted it yesterday. What do you mean it's not here yet?
Yeah, which forces you to have it in stock in a place where it's more under your control, because you have to be able to create that promise and commit to it to the customer. So for instance, if you go on Amazon, Walmart, or any of those kind of e-commerce websites, they tell you, oh, you can get this in 2 days, you can get this next week. It varies depending on the situation. And when you're going on Amazon and it says, oh, we'll ship it in 2 weeks, two things are happening. Number one, it's a drop ship model. They don't actually have it in stock. They're just relying on a third-party retailer to send it to you. Or they're stocked out and it's going to be that long for them to get it. But either way, you tend to see kind of decreases in expectation.
Yeah, sometimes I'll go on Amazon and I'll see like, yeah, you'll get this between the next like 7 to 14 days. I'm like, well, okay, that's at least I have that expectation. It's not 2 days. I find things that are best sellers like food or supplements or like snacks they can get like within 24 hours, but certain things it's like it's going to take time to get that.
And
Yeah.
and it's actually what Shopify and also Wayfair kind of built their logistics services on. So the idea at Wayfair was a good percentage of the orders actually are drop ship. So they have a relationship with the supplier, an order comes through. It's really a pass through to the supplier. Wayfair is more of a marketplace, but they had a logistics operation that they made money from by charging suppliers and saying, hey, give us your inventory. We'll have it with us. And since we know where it is, we're able to, and we know how long it takes to ship it, we can give our customers a promise that they'll get it in 2 or 3 days. And then as a result, customers are more likely to buy your items versus other items on the website. So that was true for Wayfair, and it's also true for Shopify. When Shopify Logistics existed, that was the same value proposition. It's, hey, let us have your stuff, and then through your Shopify site, we can communicate the promise, and we can also kind of make sure that you have seamless delivery of your products.
I see.
Really
So
it
let's
is
say,
kind of a,
so what you were saying is, let's say somebody sold fiber gummies, for example, a supplement. The seller might have it in 7 to 14 days, but Shopify had a logistics arm. Like you said, it was called Deliver, right? And so instead of fulfilling it themselves, they ship everything to Shopify's logistics, and the logistics would just fulfill like Amazon FBA, correct?
right. So
Yeah. And
the,
Shopify
the,
would distribute the inventory, in different to different warehouses across the country so that it would maximize the number of 2-day shippings it could promise.
But I think the point is there are trade-offs when you rely on a third party to ship your product versus, managing it in-house. You reduce the risk, but you also, at some level, reduce the service. And in reducing the service, you might be reducing your opportunity to sell more items. It depends. I mean, some things people don't need right away or don't expect right away, but others, maybe they do. So your example of supplements, you probably want those quickly. If you're buying a couch, you probably can wait a week or two. A lot of I mean, I know by personal experience, when I ordered a couch, they told me it's not going to be for a year, but I got the couch that I wanted. I just sat on an uglier couch for a year until the nicer
I
one.
had these couch cushions. They were imported from overseas, and it took like months to come in. I just had to sit on the old couch cushions until they got here. I didn't have a choice because I really liked the couch and wanted to keep it. So
Yeah. So depending
See
on
what
the
you mean.
product, there are probably different expectations of service, but that is the trade-off.
So is 2 day shipping really worth it, especially on the holidays? I mean, do you lose any customer service? But I mean, you get your product in 2 days, but are you losing anything, or what are the pros and cons of 2 day shipping?
Well, I mean, 2-day shipping is expensive, right? So it really depends on the item, how much you're expecting to sell, and like how, yes, I think definitely you need to have, or some merchants have to have 2-day shipping around the holidays because, gift type items, most people tend to buy last minute, but not every merchant needs to sell everything 2 days. There's just some items that are rarely sold, or some items that might be just really big, bulky, expensive, couches, for instance, that may not make sense to store everywhere in the country so that you can get the 2-day shipping. But really, I think it really does depend on the item itself, and also just the margin on the item, because it is more expensive from both the inventory and shipping cost perspective.
And honestly, there's a way to figure it out. You can do experiments. You can promise 2-day for certain items at certain times and then not promise it and see what difference it makes in your sales. So if it gives you a boost, then maybe you want to consider what was that boost and is it profitable to go ahead and do that? And if you don't get a boost, then that gives you your answer. It's not worth doing the 2-day promise.
So you find that many companies, will they offer 2 day shipping for free at some discount or some discounted rate to get the sale?
Sometimes, yeah, sometimes it's a loss, but it could also be just so they get you as a new customer and they get you to buy other stuff. But I also think sometimes merchants don't do the math either. So there is that hype, just like with AI, around 2-day shipping, because it seems like that's what everybody wants, and so they may just be foolishly also offering it.
I think a more important thing that people forget about the 2-day for a second, free shipping, I think, is important.
Yeah.
You're better off if your product costs $20 and shipping costs $5, just charge $25 and give free shipping.
No.
Because I don't know,
Easier.
even I suffer from this issue where I get pissed off when I have to pay for shipping nowadays.
No, you told me it was $20. Why is it now 25 at the end? Like, just give me the full price.
Yeah.
I mean, you're better off offering, 7-day shipping, but making shipping free, I think, than charging money for 2-day shipping.
Yeah, agree. And I think there's been a lot of studies done on free shipping and how that actually does increase conversion, even if you are, really just padding the price with the shipping costs.
So I'm sure with all these shipping costs with free shipping, there's more sales. So let's get back to, like, if you're going to ship all these products out for free, how do you think these e-commerce sellers should connect their inventory systems with fulfillment, shipping, and multi-channel? How do we connect the systems together so that we can offer free shipping and deliver as promised? Do you think we should use an Amazon FBA? Should we use a 3PL like a ShipHero or a ShipBob? Have you worked with those companies before?
Yeah, so what is now owned by Flexport, but used to be our Shopify Logistics, that was the idea behind it.
Yeah.
So it kind of integrated your Shopify store, which a lot of e-commerce retailers have with some of those functions. ShipBob does something similar, Amazon FBA. So there are ways to do it. The one thing that I will say is none of those ways are particularly good at multi-channel. And let me define what multi-channel is. Multi-channel to me is you have things in a store, you have things in, let's say, a traditional warehouse, and you have things in an e-commerce warehouse. An order comes in, how do you ship it? There really aren't that many good non-enterprise solutions at figuring that sort of thing out. The rest I think you can get, and it's better to do it, through one of those providers. I think if you're small, building it yourself is just too big a hill to climb. And if you're small, you can't really afford like the SAPs or the big ERP systems of the world. And I think with cloud services and kind of more these kind of agile systems that are out there, I'm not sure that's the way to go necessarily, even if you're a big company. But most of those connections are possible going that way, except for the multi-channel platform. I identified in something back in our consulting days that we were trying to build a solution for 15 years ago. We had ways to maximize profit and revenue for it, especially with, let's say, retail. You might be willing to pay an extra $10 of shipping to send something out if it's in a store that you're going to end up marking down the product. If you have a $200 product that you're going to have to do a 20% or 50% discount to sell it in, probably rather ship that to the customer for 10 extra bucks. So that kind of logic still doesn't exist in the market, and we never really got around to selling a project to do it.
Obsolescence costs. So you have products that, like maybe like high fashion, for example, maybe like winter clothes in the middle of summer. Like, listen, I'm just trying to get rid of these. I'll discount it, give up free shipping just to get rid of this product. And so that's what people do. That's what you were building a solution to do.
I think the same in at least big box or store retail is we're going to sell everything. The question is just at what price. So, at some point you're going to get rid of it, but you're going to get rid of it by selling it for 75% off. How do you agree?
Exactly. And so what are some common mistakes other than, letting products become obsolete, especially when choosing between out-of-the-box and custom solutions? So let's say choosing like an SAP or a ShipBob versus something custom built. What are the mistakes that people have?
Well, if you're small, thinking that this sort of out-of-the-box solution will work, you'll ultimately end up, customizing. But then the question is like, how much customization? Because the more customization, then it becomes, how do you manage this? And it's usually one guy who's managing it, and then one day he decides he wants to quit, and then you have to start all over. But then also at the same time, if you're really small and you do, start to build something from scratch, may not be worth it either, depending on like the trajectory of your business. So there has to be some sort of, balancing act, or knowing, where your business is headed. And there's like different, complexities. I think if you're a very, very simple business, but you obviously can afford to pay for a out of the box solution, then that's probably worth it. But if you've got a lot of complexities, a lot of the out of the box solutions just don't really work and can, cost you money in terms of inventory. There was like one client that I worked for that sold distributed t-shirts. They had, out of the box solution. Problem was like one example was they would sell a lot of pink t-shirts before October for like the breast cancer 5K walks or whatever. The out of the box inventory management solution would just say, oh great, you just had this ginormous like order of 10,000 t-shirts. Let me replenish 10,000 for the next month and for the next month. And so then you keep accumulating, all this inventory that you're not going to potentially not ever sell, but like would not sell for another year. So some of these solutions can't really capture those nuances, and that can be costly. But the other thing also is like with all this AI hype saying, AI is going to take over everyone's jobs, I think people also fail to realize that you really do need human oversight, no matter what software solution you do use. Without that, you're really at the mercy of, it's like nowadays, right? You have self-driving cars, and some of them are fully self-driving, but they operate in a very small area that's well contained. But for the most part, right, you still need to have someone behind the wheel making sure that you don't crash. So I think that's definitely true for inventory management. It's definitely not there yet where you have full,
And I'll give another example of that. I had a client several years ago that was a discount retailer. So the idea is, they're selling buys that they get, and it can be random. They don't have a predefined assortment. They just see an opportunity, they buy it, they put it in their stores, and then people go and purchase it. They did a big overhaul where they got one of the big ERP systems in to take over a lot of their processes. But we, as our little consulting company, had built a custom store allocation software for them. And at the end of the day, they ended up going with the big ERP system, but they disabled all of the store allocation logic, the ERP system, and used the custom logic that we built because it made more sense. The ERP was not built for discount retailers It was built for just random store that already knows their assortment. So the more specialized you are, probably the more reason there is to have some level of customization because you weren't built. The product was not built with your particular needs in mind. It was built for a generic user, and what does that profile look like compared to you?
Yeah, we had that issue at Connex. I was talking to two customers and they handle like pre-orders and pre-sales, and they were looking around at various ERPs and inventory tools, and they couldn't fulfill the business requirements. And I said, so what do you do now? Well, we just do things by hand. And at Connex, we're actually working on our own custom solution to handle pre-orders, so customers can go to a web-based system, enter their orders, and it's a customizable system where we can create custom workflows and fulfill it in the way that they want. So I think there'll always be a need for custom software. I mean, every business does things a little bit differently. At Connex, we have a rules engine that allows users to make custom workflows and change how the fields map. I mean, Connex, that's the magic of Connex, being able to customize it for a discount retailer versus someone who sells, sod or grass. We have sellers of various types. So I think, like you said, a lot of these out-of-the-box solutions, a lot of them can't be customized, especially at lower prices. And you find that when they need to be customized, they have to get a development team in there, a project manager. It's very expensive and time-consuming. And there's risk, too, that the team messes up and they can't deliver. So it's definitely a lot of work.
Yeah, absolutely.
So my last question of the day, how should sellers prioritize their inventory investment and manage safety stock? How do you prevent these oversells while having enough on hand to meet business needs?
Well, I will let Kermit take this one because he's the expert, but we like to say simulate, because you can do all the forecasting in the world and you can do all this, but really you want to know if you were to go back in time and re-implement the recommendations that you're trying to recommend, what would have happened. And then you can play around with, well, if I had changed my service level requirement, which would mean higher inventory, this is what it would cost, this is what I'd be left with as obsolete inventory. So I'll let Kermit speak more about this because
you already said enough, but yeah, a lot of these systems, what I find lacking in them is the ability to maybe go back in time and say what would have happened if I had used certain settings. I think that's important because you need to know what are the consequences of some of the decisions, policy-wise or settings-wise. So it's always easy for an executive to say, our service levels are down, raise them. But what does that mean? How much money are you going to have to spend to get that? So I think that's really important. But I think the other thing, a failure mode that I saw a lot when I was at Shopify and we're dealing with small retailers is you create a store and everybody believes in their own product, right? You think this is great, I'm going to offer it to the world, people are going to love it. People might not love it. And you might get stuck with a lot and get stuck with it forever. One thing that I had worked on projects with bigger retail companies is what we would call read and react. It's bring in an initial amount, maybe figure out what's the minimum order quantity for some of the goods you're going to sell, order that, and then put it on the market, and then see how it does. Some are going to be big winners, and some are going to be big losers. And even in the world where you don't want stockouts, if your original order is small, maybe you do stock out, but then that's a winner, and you can create anticipation for the next round. So I feel like what a lot of people do is they order too much because they believe in their product, but it's not your belief that counts, it's the market's belief. So it's better to get a read on that before making huge investments.
Yeah, I've seen this with video game systems. When a new system comes out, they don't over-order, they create hype, like, oh wow, there's 300,000 and I got one, now I gotta wait for the next shipment. So sometimes it's good not to over-order because some video game systems have been a complete flop, so you never know. Yeah, this has been really informative and educational. As someone who's built inventory optimization software and also works with AI, there's a lot of great information in here. I want to give a big thanks to Adeline and Kermit for your awesome insights. And if thinking about inventory strategy, or you need to upgrade from spreadsheets or in some cases pen and paper, check out Innovative Optimizations. And if you want to ditch the manual data entry and automate your e-commerce, head over to connexecommerce.com. Don't forget to subscribe, leave a review, and share this episode. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
Thanks, Joe.